Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Review channel. This week we are talking about a new launch from Jack Mason, and I'm kindly joined by Peter, one of the founders and designer of this watch that we're talking about today. Peter, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Sam. Good to be back.
So this is quite an exciting watch that we're talking about today. This is the new Canton, and it's a further evolution of the brand. It's a step up in terms of finishing, it looks like, and also the movements that you've used as well. You're entering a very competitive sports watch market. So why is now the right time for Jack Mason to design and then create a sports watch?
For each new watch that we introduce, honestly, has very little to do with any sort of trends that happen in the marketplace or, who's doing what. Because at the end of the day, everybody's doing everything. And what we're really focused on is it the right time for us? And to answer your question, we felt that we were absolutely ready to enter this sort of market segment, especially when it comes to a sport watch that people like to call a gotta go anywhere, do anything watch. Being almost 10 years in business and over the last several years, starting with our popular Strata Timer GMT that really kind of catapulted us into this space, the sport watch was something that was supposed to be another statement piece, but also a milestone for us. It symbolizes a maturity and an evolution of the brand that I think has just been a long time coming. This is actually the first time it's a Swiss made watch. So the Canton is our first time introducing something Swiss made. We opted for the Le Jeu Paré movement just because it's still sort of rare out there in the marketplace. And a lot of our customers love the higher power reserve. So with 68 hours of power reserve, obviously it was kind of a no brainer, but it's just a beautiful movement in itself and extremely reliable. We actually opted to go ahead and find all new suppliers for this watch because we didn't want to simply just move assembly to Switzerland. We wanted to actually take the product up another level. The case is better, the bracelet's better, the dial's better. Every component is we've upgraded the suppliers for that.
This watch, when you get it out, I was surprised at how thin it is. It's thinner than the date. It certainly feels thinner than the date just that I had, and it's coming in at a 10.8 millimeters thick. So it really spans the wrist very nicely. Was that one of the reasons for using this movement, was the thinness, or was it to get that higher spec movement in there?
If we really wanted to go after slimness, we probably would have opted for the SW300, which is even slimmer than this movement. However, for us, it was more so offering a package that was a little more rare. And so, as you know, the La Joux Paré movement is still not as mass produced as the Solita. It's on its way there, but we wanted to be one of the early adopters of the movement. For those who don't know, the La Joux Paré movement was bought out by Citizen Group a few years ago. And so, for me, just from my experience with Citizen Miota movements specifically, they're just so good. They're reliable. And the fact that they've brought on a well-seasoned movement manufacturing facility like Le Jeu Paré, the best of both worlds. You get kind of the structure of a Japanese-operated company, but you get the beautiful watchmaking, sort of that romance that a Swiss movement manufacturing has. It was kind of a no-brainer for us.
Yeah, that's important to point out as well. It's a new movement that you're using, and an enhanced version of that movement, but the company itself is old. It's not like a new movement manufacturer.
Right.
Just go over the specs of this really quick. So it's a 39 millimeter watch. We talked about the thickness with a lug width of 20 millimeters and then a 46 from lug to lug. Here's some shots of it on my 7.2-inch wrist. Spans it really nicely. There's a couple of things that struck me straight away, and then one thing I've definitely think we need to ask you about, because I'm sure we'll get some comments on. But the thing that struck me straight away is it has that Datejust Aqua Terra look to it.
Jack Mason as a brand, we've historically just been a brand that developed very classic designs. The idea is that, being a watch designer, every piece is truly unique. We don't use any sort of open market components or anything like that. I actually take the time to sit, sketch, design each component, the case, the hands, the indices, everything is drawn out. But we really want to be an approachable brand as well. So there's a level of familiarity that people tend to be comfortable with when they put a watch on. I'll be the first to say we're not a super innovative brand. We're not supposed to be. We're not like the studio underdogs of the world. That's just not who we are. It's really just kind of taking the most iconic watches and redefining it, just putting our, like you said, putting our own stamp on it. Because at the end of the day, I mean, think about how many watches that have been made in the last couple hundred years, right? Ultimately, one is a derivative of another. And so for me, I like taking kind of what's familiar, but then find my own inspiration and tweaking it. And so it's not just about, hey, let's take this silhouette, change the angle on it, and call it a day. I actually like going through a process. For example, the case for me, I really wanted the lugs to be inspired off of a car. And so when you look at a Lamborghini specifically, and you look at a side profile of the Lamborghini and the nose of that car, just the beautiful kind of curvature that it has and just kind of modern angularity of it. That's kind of what I was looking at when I was thinking about this case was how can I treat this lug profile similar to that of a automotive design? And so going through that kind of process is something that I find a lot of joy in. And so that kind of makes it ours. And so, when you get to the dial is like 90% of the watch, right? That's the first thing you look at. That's the first thing that either speaks or doesn't speak to you. We haven't done a lot of texture in the past. And so for this watch, we felt like adding this kind of crosshatch pattern on it gave it a little bit of a sporty feel, a little bit of an edge, just so it had a little bit more visual appeal.
Before we go more into the dial, because it's one area that strikes you straight away when you see this watch, let's talk about the bracelet really quick. You've opted to go with a oyster style bracelet with the polishing down the center links, a screw adjustment for the links, really solid feeling bracelet with quick release. So what was the design choice behind that? Because your Jubilee bracelet is like one of my favorites on the Strato timer. So why did you opt to go with a oyster? Because is this a new style bracelet?
Our current bracelet, that sort of Jubilee style seven link bracelet, and then we have a 3 link bracelet presidential style. What we haven't done was the more flat link design. And so I'm holding the bracelet here. So we really wanted to have this sort of offering. It's been highly requested from a lot of our customers because the Jubilee is not for everybody. So this was something that we really wanted to bring in. I'll talk a little bit specifically about the polished center link. Obviously, it has a certain appeal to it when the center links are polished. But I purposely went with the polish because it displays the level of finishing. So one of the hardest techniques is polishing. It makes or breaks the watch. It's the consistency of the surface of the polish, how finely polished it actually is. Because when you were to take like a lower grade polished case and you looked under it, or you looked under a loop, you can actually still see sort of ripples on the surface. But with this, the polished center links, because they are rather large surface areas, you can tell the level of quality by the reflections that it has. When you look at the lines, the highlights, the lowlights, the lines are extremely straight that go all the way across from edge to edge. That kind of shows the level of craftsmanship and the finishing quality that it has. Because those that aren't, you will start to see towards the edge the reflections start to bend a little bit in weird places and things like that, which really just means the surface is uneven. But with this, it was kind of a statement for us to show, hey, this is really high level polishing. And so, to be able to display that sort of craftsmanship, we felt like polishing the center links was the right way to go.
I'm sure I'll get some comments about this, but I just wanted to ask you about you've opted to stick with your standard Jack Mason clasp on this, which I love because it has many positions of micro adjust, but also it does look longer on this watch in particular. Why did you opt to do that?
It's been a clasp that has worked quite well for us for the majority. Of course, there are some customers who wishes that there was a shorter clasp, and that's been heard. And to be honest with you, in the background, I've been sort of developing perhaps a shorter clasp just to see if it is actually makes the overall bracelet better. This clasp has been in 2 of our last 3 watch offerings, and it's just been sturdy. It's been solid for us. So if it's a matter of just shortening it for the sake of shortening it, yes, we can do that. But it's one of those things where if it ain't broke, don't change it. And so that's mainly why we just stuck with it.
Watch also has a display case back on here, so you've got a custom rotor on there, and you've also gone for the bluing of the screws. They seem to be painted blue as well. It really is a good looking watch from the back as well.
It's our first time using this La Joux movement. We've also opted for the Saunier grade, which is a higher grade than the standard one. So the premium finishing, you got the Geneva striping, you got the blued screws on there, and also it actually the Saunier grade has a higher accuracy of plus minus 7 seconds as opposed to the standard, which is a lot higher than that. Showing that off was kind of important to us. When you look at the caseback, you'll notice the caseback actually has anti-reflective coating on it as well. Is it necessary on the back? No, but if you were to turn it around and actually spend time looking at it, it does add a nice little touch. So that's why we added that.
I'm probably going to end up editing this out because I think I've probably compared this watch to a Datejust one too many times as we've talked about this. But I own the Datejust, and honestly, it's close in feel to the Datejust that I had. There's something about the crown on a Datejust that I always it looks too small, certainly on a watch of this size, but you've opted to go with a slightly larger crown. In fact, it might even just be the same as the one on the Strato Timer.
It's a little bit different, actually. It's a little bit different. It's a little skinnier than the new Strato Timer. The Strato Timer actually, we actually recently updated them to have a larger crown on it. But these are a little bit, but the diameter is a little bit larger. It really just all comes down to proportion, right? I mean, every time we do a new watch, our approach isn't necessarily how many of the same components can we use on the next watch. Each watch is supposed to have its own identity. So if that means, but based on the case design, if the crown needs to be bigger, we'll make it bigger. If it needs to be smaller, we'll make it smaller. It all just goes, comes down to what looks right. I'm glad that you picked up on that because that was certainly something that was part of decision-making moment during the design process.
I don't think you've designed this specifically for me, but you've hit some personal bingo card moments for me because you've got the date on there, which I'm a huge fan of. The date at 6, which looks awesome. The color-coded date window as well. So you've hit 3 of my favorites, and a minute hand that goes all the way to the outer minute track. So let's just talk about the dial, the process of making the dial, because we've got a black version, a whitey silver version it looks like, and then you've gone with a rhodium looking dial, and then this is the green dial, which it looks awesome. So yeah, let's just spend a bit of time just talking about the design behind the dial.
We wanted to make sure we had some sort of texture on the dial, and so we went through a series of exercises on what kind of texture we should put on there, come up with pretty wild designs actually, but being the first new iteration of a Canton, I haven't mentioned this in this recording yet, but the Canton was a watch that we made almost 7 years ago. At that time, that version was a much more affordable version. It had a lower grade 8,000 series Miyota, which just beats at a much lower rate. But this new Canton was completely redesigned. The main difference was making sure the dial was exquisite. Adding that texture was important to us to add the sporty element to it. But the indices was something that we really enjoyed sort of working on because when you look at the watch, the indices, they look more rectangular because the top surface of the index is actually brushed. And so that's what sort of absorbs the light and defines the overall shape. But when you turn and look closely, each index actually has sort of wings, wings on it that's actually polished. And so the purpose of doing that is so that when you actually turn the watch and look at it from different angles, it just offers something a little bit deeper. It makes you look a little bit closer. It just adds just a little bit more sparkle, literally, when you look at the watch, because, we're all watch lovers, right? And so when you have a watch on your wrist, you tend to at multiple points of the day, just kind of look at the watch and admire the design, making the index not overpower the dial, but add some sort of visual appeal was important. And so it's actually indices are actually one of my favorite things to design on a watch.
Oh, really?
It really is. It's because the way I like to see it is, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this in one of our other videos, but the dial is kind of like interior design, and so indices are like pieces of furniture. It's really just kind of coming up with the right shape and all that to just sort of match the overall environment of the dial. And so, yeah, that's kind of how The indices and the hands actually came to be. The hands actually are in the former version of it. We had the classic Delphine style hands. We essentially took that philosophy, but lengthened it, faceted it, add brushing on it and polishing, and obviously a lot of loom. As you pointed out, making sure the length of the minute hand actually reached the track and the outermost edge of the index, and then the hour hand spans to the inner sort of side of the index. So everything is at the right length.
You mention it as well. The loom is spectacular on this, and there's even a little diamond of loom on the second hand as well, which is often is neglected on sports watches.
It's just one of those things where if you are in a darker room, just being able to see the second hand sweep. It's those little things. It's those little things that watch enthusiasts enjoy.
I think you've done a great job of this. It's going to be released in September the 16th, which is today, 1,499, which is this the most expensive watch that you've done?
It's definitely the most expensive watch we've done. It's a price that I know is scary for at least a lot of our own audience, just because we've historically been in a sub $1,000 price point. However, the main message for me is that, we've evolved, we've matured as a brand. Heading into this sort of market segment is a way for us to also get to where we want to be, and that's to become an absolutely premium American watch company. So what I mean by American watch company, it just means an American brand that was established here, and our goal is to sort of market ourselves and have the proper distribution to make sure we're one of the top brands that you think of anytime you think of an American brand. We plan on being around for a long time. This isn't something that I'm doing as a hobby. I have a true passion. We all do. The entire team has extreme passion for what we do. And what we're doing is really just sort of laying the building blocks down to eventually get to a point where we are recognized as a luxury American brand. But I will say this, we're not kind of creeping up in price point just to creep up in price point. No matter what price point we're at, we try to jam pack as much value into the watch. So whether that means $1,500 watch or a $2,000 watch, the goal is to always make the watch feel like it's 2-3 times more. When you hold the Canton in your hand, it's going to feel like it's way more than $1,500, and that was the goal.
The feel in the hand, the balance, fit and finish of the bracelet, the movement that you've used with that transparent case back. I hope it's a big success for you. Head on over to the Jack Mason website now to check out the first 4 colours. I'm going to say introductory colours because I've got a feeling that you might be doing some more of these if it's a success, which I'm sure it will be. But Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me again. And yeah, I appreciate the time.
Guys, let us know in the comments section down below what you think, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Reviews. Thanks, guys. Bye.